right, everybody, welcome here to New Jersey, which is the site of Casey Happy Hour, episode number 56. My name is your host, Andrew Clements, alongside me, Aaron Hackmeister. We've got a little bit of a different show than what we obviously were on last week. The big focal point, of course, was talking with the likes of Chris Wareheim, Ryan Norberg, Tony Tesoro, and a few others, a lot about our U.S. national events, our top-level karting events, classes, anything to price points, and a ton of different ideas. But mainly, obviously, started off with talking about the X30 classes, what they've looked like, where a little bit of the decline has been, and stuff of that nature. And I took a couple of those quotes, full disclosure, took them a little bit out of context to see if it triggers some more conversation on social media after the show, and it did. There's a lot of talking points about the sport, and I wanted to lead off the show before we really got into things too heavily to say that, granted, all of our broadcasts are either the national level races or a handful of really big regional races, but that isn't to say that really the majority of the sport is everything below that, right? It's a pyramid. The national races are a small percentage of the sport. The drivers we're talking about, the classes we're talking about, and the changes we want to see at those races, and the dynamic we want that sport to look like at those events is way different than the majority nature of the sport, from club racing to even regional racing. We got a lot of good comments on all that stuff. And so that's what I'll say for now. We'll talk a little bit about that more later on in the show. But I just wanted to kind of preface that. I wanted to kind of answer a little bit more, add maybe a little more context to what we were saying, and also kind of bring up some other ideas that are beyond just the X30 Pro shifter, big money stuff that we always talk about on here, which will be a little bit of tonight's episode. We got Keegan Bosch that'll be joining us in the middle segment after our first commercial break. Who's got a really cool story kind of coming back from a really gnarly car crash earlier this year with some injuries that aren't necessarily a stranger that you could get to in a go-kart wreck. And so he'll be able to talk about that. But let's go ahead and we'll jump right into it. Aaron's got a few of the races we have queued up because there was a lot of regional racing that went on over the weekend. Of course, we talked about it a lot on the coming shows. We got a lot of buddies from the Pacific Northwest that love to tune in every single week. The Tri-City Kart Club put on their Saturday night shootout is, as I saw one of the racers on social media called it like the CKNA Grands for the Pacific Northwest. They had a ton of drivers as a whole across the board. The 206 classes, 206 senior, I think, was 40 deep or damn near it. It was an awesome event. We touched on it a little bit on last week's show. We'd love to get out there to those guys and to be able to stream. And we had kind of had that conversation a little bit earlier on this year with the way the travel is and everything and just where we're at currently. We couldn't get out all the way that far. Even this trip to New Jersey meant that we were spending a lot of today and a lot of yesterday for me and Trevor, about 25 hours in the car to get up to here. So it's a haul to get up here for the Star Championship Series, and we'll talk to that a little bit later on. But wanted to give the winners across the bottom of the screen some love. And congratulations, of course, to the guys who are able to win some of the marquee classes, and show us in shifter light, shifter heavy. Some national names you might recognize in Cam Egger and Cooper Becklin. In 100cc senior, Caleb Schrader, who just ended third, I believe, in the KA senior points on the SCUSA Pro Tour. The RPG driver wins up in his home region. 206 senior to Riley Miller, and a big congrats to him. And it's a super cool event that these guys put on, and it's an event that at least a format that I think can be replicated at a lot of other club or regional tracks to kind of have one-offs, because at the end of the day, we talk about kind of national dates and moving around a little bit, different tracks where they can, but there's only so many races you can kind of hold in a year, only so many pockets of the country you can touch. So for a lot of tracks, when we have 100 tracks, 50 tracks, whatever the exact number is in the country, to put on your own event like that, promote it the way these guys have been. This was their 6th annual time doing it. They had over 160 entries. And it's a good kind of way for them to not cap off their season, but once the season's rolling, build the momentum up, and that kind of be their Daytona 500, 8,500 event of the year, which is cool. So, for more on that, you obviously can reach out to the guys at Tri-City Kart Club. They do an awesome job. You can look it up. I'd highly encourage you to check out stuff with the Saturday night shootout and what they did. It's a Friday, Saturday night show, so it's not super expensive for club and regional drivers to come out and run that event. It's not a lot of days. And since it's run by the track, they're able to do that and still have it be a profitable event that makes sense and they can put marketing dollars into, because it's just one promoter versus a outside promoter or series coming in to the racetrack. So super cool event over there. And then in terms of regional racing around the rest of the country, the Cup Karts North America guys had their CKNA North finale up at the Michiana Raceway Park, which is a track that's hosted every major national event that you can really think of, from the Rotax Grand Nationals to the Rotax Shootout to U.S. Pro Kart Series events, WK Manufacturers Cup events when that series was much larger. And it has been on the CKNA North schedule for quite some time now, which is cool. They wrapped up their schedule. They're getting set to go for the CKNA Grands, and their whole program is impressive that they've been able to kind of keep the growth in their home region, which I want to give a little bit of love to them as well, because that's always tough. They've got the Canada region, they've got the South region, which goes down to Florida, touch New Orleans, touch over into Charlotte, obviously with the Winter Nats this year, but they still had solid numbers over there to round off that championship, which is cool. And they're keeping it the right way. They're not trying to have a million events that go everywhere for a market and an engine that's meant to be as budget oriented as possible. So Aaron, and you can attest to that too. I mean, you've been to a ton of those CKNA events. The family you like to work for, the Olds family, they're over there working for the series. But, you know, I think if there's anyone that deserves some kudos for kind of keeping their pulse on making sure they don't get too big for whatever reason, I think those guys have done a really good job. We've had Greg on the show before, and he's an awesome dude.
Yeah, he's been really good. I worked for the series once. They needed some help out at Concept Haulers, and so I went out there, did some stuff. I've raced a couple of their events. It's a really well-run series, and it has kind of a nice like grassroots feel to it. You know, you go to SCUSA, USPKS, even some of the bigger regional series that you go to, and you see a bunch of team tents and everything, and you know all the big canopies, and you go to a CKNA race, and this isn't a bad thing. I like it where it's like see a lot more people. It's just trailer, canopy, go-kart. You know, one cart to a tent or a family. It's a lot more of like spirit of karting feel, in my opinion. At least that's how I look at it. Is, you know, it's just a kid and his dad going out there and racing. So they do a good job of maintaining, you know, kind of some of the grassroots feel of karting and doing it in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. We outlined like the privateer costs last week, and you know, if you want to do it at the level that the guys that are under the big teams are running, what runs those costs up is obviously the engine time, the engine rental, which the engine rental fee is pretty much a wash. Whether you rent or you own, you're going to rebuild your motors full top to bottom, and that's about the same cost that they charge for engine rentals nowadays, because the rental needs to be fresh for them to, you know, be at the level that everyone else is going to be at. So when you're already spending $6,000, what's another $2,500 to some people? It's a much smaller percentage of the budget. So you see more of that team aspect. And it's kind of created more of a culture, especially in the last decade, where if you were to walk the fence line, you were to talk to all the parents that were there, there's a perception that you have to be with the team, that there is secret sauce to it. And there's no question that there's a major value. And we've talked about that on the show, I think, a few times too. Not a ton recently, you know, but there is a good point that I know one dad made to me a while back. He's like, look, man, we're running 4 events, 5 events a year, and we're going up against, you know, tuners and coaches and team owners that are essentially paid professionals that do this every single week. So assuming that you're going to be able to out-tune them, not even taking into account that they've got multiple data points. You know, they can run 5 practice sessions in a single practice session if they've got 5 really good drivers in a single class. So they can learn a whole lot more on that aspect. But, you know, Greg was very adamant when he came on the show a while back how important it is that, you know, that perception doesn't go into the races he's got. He knows that the CKNA Grands is kind of its own animal that's going to morph into something bigger and bigger and bigger every single year. And it is. I mean, it's going to be easily over. I think it could touch 400 entries this year with the international guys fully being able to come back. But, you know, so there's not going to be a way to fully stipend the growth there. But at least at those events, they do, I think, a really solid job at kind of keeping that at a grassroots feel. And, you know, then we go again to kudos to the Rock Cup guys. We didn't really get to touch on the Rockfest East, but the Rockfest West, you know, was a combo event of them having the Rock California Challenge kind of in line with the Rock Cup USA promotion over at Sonoma, California. For those guys to put that event on, still has a good amount of drivers because they have such a good market over there, but it's not you know, it has the Rock Cup officiating staff, but it wasn't like an overly intimidating event. You're going to see more team stuff at the 2-stroke races anyway, but, you know, and again, some national guys that come back to it, but still a regional feel. Hunter Pickett was in the shifter field, and Brian Keck, who's the name that I haven't recognized from the national races this year, was over there and ended up winning, just beat out Hunter at Sonoma. And then going down in 100cc junior, Steven Eisert, who's done a really solid job in the junior ranks and, has got himself onto the KC broadcast more than a good amount of times this season, won out in 100cc junior. And they had a lot of prizes, which, again, we talk about prize packages and what they do. And, our point last week with the show wasn't to try and make it that, we want everyone to, it's not like this crazy delusion that we need the promoters to make zero money and every driver in the field to make every bit of their entry back and then some. That's not the case at all, because there's no way, at the end of the day, it is a business and someone's going to have to pay that bill for someone to get a $5,000 check at the end of the weekend. But the way that they did it, right, is they're able to give, entry to Rock Vegas, which was cool. They had some cash prizes for a lot of those classes, 2,500, I think, in a lot of the bigger ones, 1,000 to win in some of the smaller ones. And it just makes it hurt a little bit less. But there's a lot of other off the wall ideas that I kind of want to hit a little bit in the segment 3 that I've kind of had. And again, a lot of that we'll get to read some of the comments that were on some of the posts that we threw up, just kind of spitting off the wall, because I don't think there's any bad idea. There may be some ideas that may not, make perfect sense right now or may shock the system. But I also think there's ideas that the sport is not yet tried that wouldn't necessarily rock the boat so hard that it would, upset anybody or hurt anyone's bottom line, which, like it or not, we want these guys to be full-timers in the sport. We want promoters that are on social media every single day and running a really professional level event. Well, if you want professionals, you got to pay for professionals. And enough of that. At least the Stars Championship Series event is on for this weekend too, up here in New Jersey. And we have the entry list for that one. Another major triple-digit event for these guys. The KA classes are 30 plus. But it is, as expected, a little bit lighter than going to GoPro in Newcastle. And granted, we've been saying the Stars is kind of like your third tier series behind USPKS and behind the SCUSA Pro Tour. But this event, if you didn't go to Stars New Jersey and you ran the opening 2 events, then you kind of forfeit your right to complain about going to the same racetracks. Now, it's not the exact same crowd. Again, this is a hybrid budget, again, because it's a third series below USPKS and SCUSA. There's a lot, there's still a good 50-50 breakup, I'd say, of either very, very small shops that maybe have 1 or 2 customers, or privateers and bigger teams that are here. But look, we want to go to different places. Different places are going to be sometimes in farther reaches of the country than a couple hours away, or not your home racetrack. And if you want series to keep coming here, it's got to be sustainable for them. So we talked about that last week. SCUSA has even seen it when they went to their essentially home base in Cal Speed, but it's all the way over in Southern California, and they were smaller there for the only stop in SCUSA's backyard that season, compared to Newcastle in the center of the country that has a very healthy club, which Cal Speed is a really healthy club too. They were less. I think there were 225 a few years ago at Cal Speed, or 230 or 40, compared to 280, nearly 300 at some of the Newcastle events. So, but hey, I mean, the fact that the series could still go here and easily get into the triple digits, to easily pull, nearly a full field of KA Junior and KA Senior is good. Every other class is still decent. It's just going to be lighter than going to a racetrack that has 200 club guys at GoPro and 200 club guys at Newcastle. Really, probably 300 entries, 200 raw drivers, 250 raw drivers. But and they knew that coming in too. I mean, these guys are trying different things, and we even I've talked about those guys could be the guys that could be the ones that bring in the OKN motors, because they're open to anything. They're doing the track light safety system. They've got each event branded. There's something new they're doing every single year. The night fight at GoPro was different, so they're trying. So as much as we want to try off the wall ideas, we got to support them in a little bit. And if we want to go to a cool place like New Jersey Motorsports Park that hasn't seen a big race in 5 years, this is part of what we have to do as an industry is find a way to get out there. But anyway, I just got back into the comments. I forgot I sent Trevor and Kyle to go get Taco Bell for me tonight. I need to text them during the commercial break so they know.
I was trying not to laugh as I saw that. I was like, "Oh, Xander's not getting dinner tonight, is he?"
Oh my gosh, man, I'm killing myself.
Going back to the topic of New Jersey, though, like the track seems super cool. Like, I'm super stoked to go out. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. But part of, when people say, oh, we want to see these new tracks and stuff, and then nobody goes and runs the regional stuff, some series use that as a gauge of like, can we go there for our major series? USPKS and Route do that. SCUSA is not affiliated with Stars, but I'm sure, or PKS would look at if they went to a new track to see if that's viable for them. And Stars, like you just said, has done a great job of just bringing in new things to do and new things to try out with the light system and the timed races. Timed races, really interesting stuff like that. And but yeah, it starts at a lot of these events where you have maybe a regional series, not a full national, is going to go somewhere, and that's how you're going to get some places to go to new tracks. And yeah, people have to go to it. Nobody's going to go to Maine if they're not going to go to Maine if nobody's going to show up. But if you had 300 people that would go out to Maine to go race an event, they'd do it.
And there was some more news, unfortunately, for the region a little bit as well. It sounds like the classic track in Englishtown up here in the Northeast is maybe going away, which has been the birthplace for a lot of big guys. Brandon Jarsakrak, Ryan Raffa, Andre Castro's in USF Juniors. The list goes on for a lot of really good guys, and I can't think of more at this time. But this whole region up here, it hasn't had a big club following. The closest thing to it is the F Series, which is kind of like a traveling club series between the New York Race Complex. They do a state championship, and then the F Series itself. Both of them are really light, like competition. They're very easy to get into. They're not a competitive series. It's not an expensive series. It's a perfect traveling club program for guys in this region that want to go to one or two other tracks, and they're going to lose one, which is really unfortunate, it sounds like. But either way, at least a good amount of people showed up to this racetrack. Again, everybody watches. I know, in the interactions we have with all these serious promoters too. I mean, they do watch all each other's stuff, right? I'd be, NOLA was, already on the radar and a good central location regardless. But if all of a sudden the TSRS event started pulling a whole lot less, that obviously is a gauge for SCUSA the following week of what that club area is, which is cool that, we've had Christy Kendall on the show with Drive Your Line Karting, and the fact that she's going to have club races there here in the fall. They're going to have club races at the Biloxi track in Mississippi. So that region will start to get some growth again. They've already got one other shop along with hers that started to kind of support stuff at NOLA and other places, which is needed because at the end of the day, the kart shop is a salesman for the sport. And a shout out to Ryan Raff and his family with we talk about Full Tilt Racing because they pit with Mike Doty Racing and Brandon Jarscrack, a lot of the big events. They're here full time, and they're doing race kart rentals here at New Jersey Motorsports Park, and they're trying to get involved to put more stuff up here as well. So, at least people are trying different things, and this series is, and there's a decent turnout that's here. I think people that are here are going to like the facility, maybe not like the drive so much, but it's the debate that we had last week really is what it comes down to, is that as much as we want to think that we are at a level where, there could be pro events or we can go wherever we want to, the truth of the matter is we can't. That is, I don't know what the percentage would be. I don't know if it's a 50-50 breakdown of guys that will go anywhere versus guys that will only go where it's convenient for them. It might be closer down to 30 or 40% that only are going to go to, races that maybe have a higher entry fee, but a higher payout or less track time, right? I mean, we're serving a lot of different people at these bigger series. And that's why I'm a big proponent for the guys at the Saturday Night Shootout. That's why I'm a big proponent and try it every week to showcase all the regional action that we have going on around the country, because that's where a lot of people should play. And if those are able to grow, that's going to foster growth in that region. Numbers breed numbers. Just like one class at 20 is inviting and is exciting as another guy's going to get in. If a club all of a sudden gets to 100 entries, there's going to be 3 or 4 more guys that see a business opportunity in that club region and will start a kart shop. And then when they start a kart shop, they may start with a couple customers they might pluck from privateers or even, maybe dissatisfied from another shop. But ultimately, once they get their feet and, they get on the ground and get running, they're going to start bringing more people into that region by finding new people to get into the sport as well. So the more bottom level growth that we get on the regional stuff, the more we can have kind of a bigger 200 or 300 person circus that can go wherever. But right now I would bet that we only have about 100 to 150 people that go wherever. And then we have another 100 that fills up the other 200, the other part, maybe 150, again, maybe 50-50, maybe more at these events. Again, this is an event that's probably going to end up around 130, 140, maybe 150 entries after walk-ups. So you compare that to the 50 entries they got at GoPro. But even then, in their case, they only got a handful of the GoPro locals that ran there on the same tire and the same engine classes and everything except for 206 Cadet and 206 Junior. So it's tough, but a lot more to talk on that front. We're going to take our first commercial break. I got my Taco Bell order in, so hopefully Kyle and Trevor aren't too mad. I get to eat on my birthday. I want to say thanks to everybody in the comments so far. There have been a lot of happy birthdays from everybody here. I want to give a shout out to, before we go to commercial, to my dad. My dad's birthday was yesterday. He watches every single show, and so I want to say thanks and happy birthday to my dad. Happy belated birthday. But yeah, thanks to all you guys for reaching out with all the love about the happy birthday stuff. We'll talk a little bit more about that racing stuff anyway, and we'll get more into it later on in the show. And so if you have any comments that you didn't already submit in on last week's show or on last week's post, send them in. Trevor Marsha, I just saw yours come in. I'll take a look at it here during the commercial break, and we'll put that into the final segment and have something to talk about. But yeah, super cool stuff. At the end of the day, these conversations, I like having them if they're in the right light. Yeah, as long as we keep it constructive, we'll be good. Well, more on that later anyway. I don't want to ramble too long. We'll take a commercial. Be right back.
Line has steadily made progress since its inception in October 2021. On top of servicing the Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana areas with products from Comp Kart chassis, Tillotson carts and engines, Miami, Briggs, Honda, and more, they're now promoting race events as well throughout the mid and coastal South region at NOLA Motorsports Park and Finish Line Performance Karting in Biloxi, Mississippi. Races are already set for the fall of 2022. September 3rd, October 22nd, and November 12th at NOLA Motorsports Park, and 2 dates, September 10th and October 15th at Finish Line Performance Karting. Driver Line is set to finish this year strong. KC Happy Hour is presented by Precision Performance Karting. PPK is the exclusive South Florida distributor for the American-made Coyote Zenith kart racing chassis. PPK is offering trackside support at all the Cup Kart South Division events, the CKNA Majors, including the Spring Nats and the Grand Nats, the Sunshine State Karting Challenge, and a number of club events in the Southeast. New here for 2022 and in partnership with Brandon Jarscrack Racing, PPK is also offering full arrive-and-drive opportunities in the Junior Senior Briggs 206 classes at the popular Stars Championship Series and the GoPro Motorplex Karting Challenge events. The same professionally prepared kart and motor package has propelled Brandon to victories at Winter Nationals and the Monticello Divisional in 2022 are available to you. In addition to the Coyote line of racing chassis, Precision Performance Karting is also a distributor for Odenthal Racing products, Hilliard clutches, Vega tires, and Greyhound racing seats. Check out Precision Performance Karting on Facebook and Instagram or email them at ppkartingfl@gmail.com. From 4-stroke to 100cc to 125cc and beyond, Technokart USA has a winning option for you. Based out of Des Plaines, Illinois, Technokart USA offers both chassis designed to win in all divisions of North American karting and a top-level race support program at the U.S. Pro Kart Series, Route 66 Sprint Series, select Cup Karts North America races, and both the Rock Vegas and SCUSA Super Nationals. Podiums, wins, and championships are waiting for you whenever you're ready to get on a Technokart. For more information, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechnokartUSA.
All right, guys, welcome back here. We'll take a pause on the fix karting with a million different fixes, and everyone's got their own solution for the moment. We'll come back to that here in our final segment, but I wanted to make sure that we gave a little bit of time to talk about something we haven't talked about really a ton on the show, and that is injuries. We're at New Jersey Motorsports Park this weekend for the Stars Series. It's a racetrack that typically is a track where there's probably 4 or 5 corners that you really do get onto the curbing pretty good. 1 or 2 where the curbs are a little bit higher. The curbs that you do get onto are a little bit flatter in certain sections. But I have heard of guys kind of injuring their rib cages here, maybe cracking a rib, bruising the muscle, or fully breaking one. And rib injuries are one thing. That's the most common thing we see when we see, wrecks in the sport. You see, things like concussions, which is what unfortunately Cole Kleck got in his gnarly crash at Utah earlier this year. Coming back from injuries like that, it's not like you can nurse those muscles back to health. You kind of have to wait for them to recover. And at least with concussions, there's a little bit better testing. With the rib testing, you can go and get x-rays, but you can still kind of re-injure yourself and then double the recovery period. And so There have been a lot of guys that have gone through those, and we'll have more of them come on the show as it goes. But being that he's on the entry list for this weekend, I figured it'd be no better than to bring a kid in that's had a very eventful year off the racetrack, and that is none other than Keegan Bosch. Keegan, thank you for joining the show here with us tonight, buddy. How are you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Let's go back through, can you kind of walk everybody through a little bit what you've been through before you even got onto the racetrack this year, the car crash and everything that you had going on? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so after Supernats, literally like the week after, I was driving to school one day and I was victim to another driver driving carelessly and ended up flipping my truck multiple times. I suffered spinal nervous damage, a lot of back stuff, concussion, a whiplash. And unfortunately, with the back problems, these still affect me today. And I go to therapy for that to get that fixed. I go to the chiropractor often. I just have to get a lot done with my back, and I'm still not comfy with it yet. But that's the ultimate goal, is to where I can sit in a karting chassis again, race car chassis, any of the sort, and feel comfortable sitting in the seat without it stressing me out anymore.
And, you talk about stressing it out, right? But ultimately you were able to come back at GoPro for the night fight. You've been in the seat a good bit this year, all things considered, and you ran to the top 5 in the end of the main event there. What was the process kind of getting back in? Did you do a couple test weekends before? Did you jump right in at a race weekend? Did you go to the doctor a handful of times to kind of get cleared, or at least good enough?
Yeah, so she would let me know like when I was cleared. She didn't want me in a car chassis since the accident for at least 2 to 3 months. So after that, the first test was Badger, which is my home track in Dousman. I tested there a couple times and then relayed back to her how it felt, how comfortable I was, if I was ready, and she was going to get back to me. And finally with GoPro, she cleared. Actually, I think first was Newcastle. I think Newcastle, I was good that weekend too. But the one weekend that I actually made a good result was definitely GoPro, which I think we finished. I think I was top 5. I was rounding up to 3rd. But otherwise, yeah, I'm kind of on a setback now. But my back issues have been kind of getting worse. But that's kind of why I've been kind of taking a step down from racing as of now, just so I can take care of myself before I get back out on the racetrack. But yeah, it was just getting reps in. Wait until I was good, wait until she was good, mutual agreement, just so I wouldn't make this any worse for myself, because karting is really a stage where ultimately it's not going to be my future, for a job. So right now it's just about me and making sure my future is clear within racing. So that's kind of just where I took it, just being careful with myself.
And talking through, what it's like, what was that GoPro weekend like? What was Newcastle like for you in the go-kart? Like, were there specific, left to right corners? What was the parts that really triggered you? Was it the longevity and the endurance of being in it for that long? Is there anything that stuck out?
It was mainly longevity, and then there's hard curbs, they'll upset it. It's all my lowers. Every time I would bounce or anything like that, I'd feel like a pinch because it's in my nervous system. But as far as GoPro went, GoPro for sure, the one that would hurt the most was the last corner. Because also with my eyes aren't really good either. So when it was dark at GoPro, that last corner, I'd keep on hitting that, and it got to the point where I just asked if I could have a pad for the back of my seat, which it helped. But over time, that weekend, that was definitely the weekend afterward. I was like, okay, so we need to rethink this. This is kind of making it worse for me. Coming into the weekend, I felt great. Leaving the weekend, I was like, I don't know if I can handle another one of these weekends, unfortunately, mentally and physically. So that's kind of where GoPro had me at the end of that.
And so where does that leave you right now?
Currently, I'm feeling good. I'm in volleyball, which volleyball, I haven't had any problems. Really, it's only been my knees because of how much diving you do. But back, I feel like I've been pretty good. Right now, it's just family stuff. I have to accept that my dad, my mom, that racing is not in the cards for them right now, because I'm not the one paying, it's them. I got to respect what they need and what they're asking me, and I can't argue. So mainly what I've been doing is just lifting, staying physically active as much as I can, trying to eat better, and just doing things to better myself currently until they're ready to put me out there again.
And then, from like a lifting, perspective with what you've got going on to try and, get yourself back to health. Are there a lot of specific exercises that you do that are you going lower weight, higher rep? Obviously you said endurance was the biggest thing, is it would slowly, the muscles around probably tighten up over the course of a race, right?
Mm-hmm. So mainly what I've been doing is just avoiding using barbell on my back because I had an accident during school where I was using a squat rack and I put it on my back. And once I went down, something within my back like shocked and it just kind of collapsed. But so I've been kind of scared about squat recently. So what I've been mainly just using free weights. So I just been like doing like ankle exercises. I've been doing squats. I would do things that just give my legs somewhat of a workout. But as far as like upper body goes, I still bench. I still use barbell. But anything that stays off of my back and doesn't bother me at all, I tried a lot of things to make sure I knew what I was comfortable with. And I have my own regimen now, and I'm sticking by that as much as I can. And my coaches are respecting that because as far as volleyball goes, we lift often. So they kind of just like being lenient with me, working with me in ways that I can, and just being respectful of my injuries. And it's been nice for me. So it's nice to finally have a clear path for what I need to do and for what I want. And we're just going to keep working, hopefully get me back out there as much as I can and keep working with my parents and hoping that eventually that our lives will all clear up and racing can become a part of it again.
Well, it'd be cool to see you back. We're gonna obviously miss you for the time off that you're gonna take, but that's the smartest way to go about it, no question, right? And again, like your back's it's not a broken arm. Like when I was in kindergarten, I broke my right arm, which is I guess a fun fact if I want to give it out here for my birthday. I guess I broke my right arm jumping on a couch, not even a trampoline. It wasn't even that cool. But I got a big hump in the middle of my wrist, like right here. So my wrist, my arm went like right past my wrist, went up. So at least with that, I could see when it was back to fully healed because the x-ray would tell me and then we're good. And it wasn't like I'm putting a lot of stress on it over a long time where you are with more internal injuries or stuff like that with your back. And it's something that the same with rib injuries, which we'll have guys talk about, but putting different pads in, obviously icing, doing everything you can with the muscle is super, super important. And I think we just lost, unfortunately, him on the connection, but it was about time to wrap up anyway, Aaron, as we know on the time schedule for it. I can't remember. Had you gone through similar rib stuff as well?
I did a little bit when I first started. When we first got into karting, I was 14, 15, and we didn't want to put a ton of money into it because I was still playing hockey at the time. And so I bought for like $150. I bought full like helmet, suit, everything, and we had this really bad, crappy like rib protector. And so I'm from the same track as Keegan out at Badger. You run the curves really hard there, and I ended up over the course of a year like hurting my ribs doing that. And then I like didn't like practicing because it would hurt more in practice than it would in the race. And so we ended up like once we got a new rib protector that fixed it, and I really haven't had issues since. And that's the only race related injury that I had. Keegan, though, he's saying like he got a concussion, and you're talking about you broke your arm, and you can see the healing there. I got a concussion playing hockey. I went head first into the boards and got a concussion, and I felt like I was fine after like 2 months. And I go and I tell my coach, we're probably like 6 weeks after the concussion or after the hit, and I'm like, Coach, I'm fine. Like let me go out and practice and get ready for it. And I go out to practice, and I can't hit the net. I can't make a pass. Like there is nothing I can do. I felt fine, but obviously like the coordination wasn't there. The ability, like the skill ability still wasn't there. I was still like obviously hurting from the concussion. So those are things, you can't work out to fix your muscles. You can't do anything. You literally just have to wait. You have to sit around and do nothing. And it sucked, but it sucks that that's what you have to do for a lot of injuries is you just sit around and do nothing, even though I really want to get back on the ice and play. It's the same thing with rib injuries and karting or concussions that you get in karting or anything like that. The longer you can wait and not irritate whatever you injured more, like the better you'll be in the long run.
100%. One guy we talked about right before coming on the show is a good friend of the show and friend of ours is TJ Coyan. And he's well documented his process when he kind of tried to come back a little bit too early after rib injuries. And, eventually came back multiple times before it was fully healed. Every time he'd try and go longer, give it a little more time to heal, think it'd be all right, look like it would scan okay, get back out there, re-injure it to the point that now he's got scar tissue. He's basically, got baby ribs, where he's, as he likes to call it anyway, where he's a lot more prone to pain with him. He's have to be a little more careful when he goes out and runs, which is always funny that he goes and runs the Road America when you have to mob. I guess they're flatter curbs, but you got to destroy those things in turns 1 and 2 and jump them nowadays. But it's injuries are part of the sport. I wanted to give Keegan a little bit of airtime because he's a good buddy of ours. We featured him obviously on the cover shot. He's not going to be obviously in action this weekend. Like you mentioned too, budget's a big thing. Talk about budget a little bit after the break. We got some more comments that have come in, which are awesome. Aaron's going to go over some of the stuff that we had last week. And like I said, we focused so much of that discussion on what we wanted to kind of have some sustainability at the very top, for long-term growth. And I'll explain a little more of that there, but at the same time, there's a lot of basic stuff that could be covered too. I felt like we beat that drum a little bit hard on some other episodes and maybe not so much on those specific quote posts that we took just out of context on it. There's different ways that we can definitely work on this sport to make it a little better. And I think that's one thing that everybody can agree on. But, as we preface that segment there was an article that came out on racer.com that was about Jimmy Johnson's future in IndyCar that I thought had a really interesting quote about it. And he was talking about how, obviously IndyCar, their big focus they're trying to get, while they have some great fan attendance at certain events, their TV viewership is very lackluster compared to the other American racing series. They're already getting beaten by F1 half the weeks. They get beat by SRX. They get beat by the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series sometimes. And so, they're trying to come up with different creative ways. The Hy-Vee IndyCar Iowa weekend was a huge success. It wasn't a big success on the TV side. That wasn't the promotion side, but they filled the stands up at a racetrack that isn't a destination city, isn't a destination racetrack. It's not something that people thought would be big, but they had, everyone's collectively in that series, it seems for the most part, pulling the weight forward. And Jimmy was saying that he didn't feel like it was the same way in the NASCAR paddock and the NASCAR garage, where there was a little more finger pointing and a little bit less of, okay, we do know that we have opportunities and some weaknesses in our sport. And we do know that we've got stuff that we could change or do better. But it's not like it's your fault that it's bad in IndyCar where they're at right now. We've talked about, the Supercross world. You look at some of the other sports world, you listen to their podcast, you watch some of their shows. I mean, every major sport is always looking to be a little bit better, and they're having these same kinds of conversations. And some of them have a little bit more of a toxic environment about it, and some have a little more positive environment about it. And while we talk about a lot of that stuff on the show, I want to make sure that we foster all these ideas and we have these debates, whether it's in the comment section, whether it's a different guest that we bring on, that it does foster that positive environment. Because I think it's important to have those conversations of what does drive growth in the sport. What are some new ideas that we haven't tried before? Do they make sense? At least say it out loud, at least try it, right? Again, for these Stars guys, they've been labeled by some, right, as just kind of a Midwest regional. And when they first started, they were labeled as like, oh, this is just a copy. We don't need another series up in this region. So again, they're taking measures to try and make their events stand out. They're doing different things. They're wanting to do something on their own. And then this weekend, right, they're dipping into the Northeast. No series is going here besides the F Series, the traveling club series, right, and a handful of other events in the past, going way back to the Rotax Grand Nationals and then the Rotax Trophy, Northeast Series that I don't know. I can't remember if they had an event here this year or not, but I know that they've had events here in the recent couple of years. But nothing big.
I think they might have had something going on up where you are. I say up here. I'm still in Indy. Up where you are in the Northeast. I think they had 1 or 2 events up there. But like Rotax is still kind of trying to make a comeback right now. It's not the major stuff that we look at and say like this is what everything is looking good as right now. But I think they might have had 1 or 2 events up with the Rotax East Series, which, like you said, it's not. This is the first time that really a series that has had some spotlight on it we have through Kart Chaser that has really gotten able to go out there and kind of showcase what the New England area has at all.
Absolutely. Well, we'll take this moment here to go to our final commercial break. We've got a lot of great comments that came in over last week that we'll go over, a few here in this week's stream. We'll talk to you guys about all that. You guys can keep on sending them in of questions, comments, stuff we can react to, stuff we can put some light on, maybe make another quote post out of context and get a lot of shares and a lot of people riled up in the comment section. But again, it's just it's managing that, right? Sometimes I like to say I want to dance that line a little bit of just enough exposure and just enough open conversation that sometimes you might go a little bit too far, and try not to make that same mistake again in the same degree over and over. But having those productive conversations and not just kind of covering over everything and saying everything's fine when it could be better, or it could be, getting worse and we're acting like there isn't a problem, which, we talked about the racecraft stuff over and over again here. And I think that in some ways it's gotten a little better the last few races. In some ways, maybe it hasn't, but it's not going to get better if we ignore it. That's for sure. So anyway, we'll be right back after this with a little bit more action.
Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as Iami and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com.
At New Gen Motorsport, we're committed to using our 10-plus years of experience and knowledge to help grow the sport of karting from the bottom up. Our goal is to make karting more accessible to the average person, lessening the financial burden of getting started, and making the learning curve as small as possible. Our passion is training and developing drivers, mechanics, and engineers to not only be the best they can be in karting, but also for careers in the much larger world of professional motorsports. A strong foundation makes building bigger easier. Let us be that foundation for your karting and motorsports career. Be part of the new generation of motorsport. Contact us today to schedule your test day, arrive and drive race event, or to inquire about how we can help get you started in your own new gen racing kart.
Don't settle for a national engine builder. Take care of yourself with an international one. SRP Engines is a global industry leader in engine services, specializing in engine formulas such as KZ, OK, OKJ, and Mini 60. SRP Engines is the engine of choice for Magic Kart USA and helped power North America's #1 ranked pro shifter driver AJ Myers to the 2021 SuperKarts USA Pro Tour National Championship. SRP Engines can also service any spec engine class of your choice, including Iami and Rock divisions. However, if you're looking for the absolute choice when it comes to KZ shifter engines, there is nobody better. For more information, contact Amar Sanada at srp-engines.com. KC Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series. Featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well. Featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube, it's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Aaron, let's go ahead to our comments from last week. We'll have you read those ones off and react to them first that you got for us.
Yeah, so first one I grabbed was right here. I think the overlay's cutting off the top of it, but it generally just says, if you want to make the sport cheaper, shorten the events. National events are running nearly an entire week now, and why? Just so there's more days of practice. How many days of practice do you really need to get up the ladder? Pretty much every other form of racing is limited to a few sessions at best. And then he goes on to talk about shorter events. So there's less tires, travel, less expenses, stuff like that. And I agree to this. I think that from what I've seen, you can practice one day, you can start practice on Friday, you can start practice on Wednesday. The fast guys are still going to be fast. It doesn't change. You're not giving somebody an opportunity to move from 35th to 10th because they get 2 extra days of practice, because the other guys are still going to be there. They've still got the same amount of time to develop and everything. I don't see any reason why we can't just do a Friday practice for any event, really.
Yeah. So this was one of those comments that we've talked about on the show a little bit before, and it's an obvious fix, right? I've we go back even just 5-7 years ago, and Thursday practice was just getting introduced a little bit on the SCUSA Pro Tour when it was still primarily West Coast and hadn't made its way to Newcastle yet. And it wasn't an option yet on USPKS because USPKS was a similar WK Man Cup format. The argument for it was that teams were already starting to show up to racetracks to test the weekend before. They were saying it was more expensive to come out, fly out, go there for the weekend before, and then come back and then, have to test on Friday versus adding one extra day on Thursday. As we all know now, they still do that. Everyone still shows up and tests the weekend before, and we're also doing Thursday practice. And that is a no-brainer that can be fixed. The part of the background behind it, right, is, everything – when I talk about like shock changes to the industry, good or bad, right? The tracks, and I'm saying this off pure speculation and seeing the revenue. I've seen the revenue that comes in, but I'm not someone that has sat in on the contract negotiations of the exact dollar amount and the back and forth of what tracks versus series take on these events, right? But when we talk about all these major events, they come in and they negotiate typically a flat rate with a racetrack. It's normally not a big rev share option, maybe a cost share, but normally they're trying to get just a flat rate. If you're the track owner and you're going to get all that Thursday practice revenue and you're going to get that weekend prior or even, the Wednesday practice revenue, you'd be more inclined to either at least host that series, if not also give them a slightly discounted flat rate. And then from the team perspective and all the shops that are going there, right, the argument is then, okay, the cost to bring a big rig across the country is now spread over one extra day. So in theory, it's a little better. But those aren't the end customers at the end of the day. The end customers are the people that are taking off work, getting kids out of school, trying to write all kinds of random absentee notes to not get the truancy officer to show up at their door, or enrolling in private schools or online schools to do this stuff. And there's no question that cutting down on Thursday practice and the sessions would bring the costs down. And like you said, it won't change the front of the field. Will the back of the field, I think, get tighter by the end of the weekend? I think absolutely, because you do see sometimes, especially at temporary circuits, guys get an advantage and that field will tighten up by the time we get to Sunday. But, this isn't something that is, if we talk about, kids' classes, right? And that's the big argument against it. Is the kids are getting out of school. It's not doing them any favors when it comes to trying to get them at a high level to go to car racing down the line, because in a car weekend, you get 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4 practice sessions, and that's it. So exactly, just like what Ray said there in the comment section, it doesn't do them justice on that front. The argument, the other argument for it really is like, okay, if we're spending X amount of dollars for a weekend, I want as many laps as possible. And that was something that I tailored ended on the Instagram of my quote comment there, that like, if we are top level racing, if we are wanting to be pro racing, then that mindset of your entry fee is divided by the number of laps you get needs to go away. Forget the travel costs, forget whatever. Your stuff will come a little bit lower. You might pay a little more per lap by having less days on the racetrack and still having the same price airline ticket to get there, the same price of fuel to get there. But this is something that, like Trevor Marsha put, the Stars series still Friday to Sunday or Thursday to Saturday with the night fight. They're strongholded on that. For the other events to shift away from this, anytime there's this kind of change, I think there's pushback. I do agree. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's something we've talked about. It wasn't something we mentioned on last week's show, just because we didn't have just because we've talked about it, and it's an obvious fix. That's something that I think a lot of people ask for. Maybe we don't push hard enough. It's great that it's in our comment section here, and I encourage everybody here to comment as well, because it's something that I can go and show to the series too, to say all these names that are coming in and chiming in. But it's important that we all talk to each other in the paddock a little bit. There was a comment right up above here in the stream from Barry Hastings about wanting to fix karting is more welcoming competition. The one downside I think that happens with team racing is then we stay in these privatized tents. We don't go out and talk to our pit neighbors nearly as much as maybe at a club race or at a regional race or at a more, where the tent doesn't have walls on it. I mean, that is intimidating. I know as a kid, I'd see some of those big tents and I'd have buddies racing under them, and I would be nervous to even just walk in and go talk to my friend. Now, not all kids are as nearly socially awkward as I was at that age or as intimidated by some of that stuff, but I can imagine that stuff's intimidating. It's intimidating to everybody. There's a reason why the tents are there. It obviously keeps the rain out, keeps people from looky-loos. It's a great way to lock things up at the end of the day and not have to put everything back into your trailer when you have a lot of go-karts. But we need to talk to each other because I think a lot of people agree on wanting to have less days for events. But again, speaking with pocketbooks on it, we're right now the biggest events, SCUSA Pro Tour, USPKS, do have Thursday practice, and they do have people testing the weekend before. Until that number of people comes through and, whether it's a petition or a number of emails that flood into the inbox of those series or a big comment section like here with a lot of different names that we show them, that doesn't change. Just because the model of where all the business guys are in, I think it makes sense for them. But anyway, go to the next one, Aaron.
Yeah, so the next one we have up is from Connor's dad, actually. He's talking about, this was the context to this was that they were talking about, I think this was Ryan's, where he was talking about promoting other drivers and stuff like that. And he's saying that team owners aren't doing it, meaning supporting drivers, like bringing drivers up, maybe sponsoring them a little bit out of their own pockets. They're passing the costs along to the paying customers, raising the cost of the sport overall. The approach has certainly worked well for some teams, but there's no doubt it raises the cost bar and may make the sport look unaffordable, or the path forward too difficult for people who can't or won't spend nearly 5 figures per race. And again, this is, something that, you look at, say, I'm going to throw Ryan Norberg under the bus here a little bit. You look at Rollison going to have Ryan Norberg under the tent like they did. And Ryan is a very capable driver, coach. He's a very capable driver. And if you want to have him under the tent, and if you want to entice him to come over there and pay for everything and say, hey, we're giving you a full ride, you do have to make that money from somewhere. And I think this was a little bit of a misinterpretation of what we were saying, but I liked the spirit that it was getting at, where, the series providing opportunities for the drivers to move up, whether it's through the series promoting themselves or giving the teams incentive to promote drivers that way and move them from, say, K senior to X30 senior and stuff like that. It was an interesting point there that I thought. And I specifically thought about the last part too. Parity can, or cost and parity, are two biggest challenges in karting. Parity can probably be debated. Cost, not so much. They're very high.
Yeah. So, Ryan's a professional driver coach, right? He gets to race for free with a lot of the winnings that he has. If you want to try and break down and really split hairs, at the end of the day, there's a value for that, right? There's a value, guys are willing to pay for it, and there's a model out there for it. Trying to say that is pro is not true, right? If anything, technically he's semi-pro because he's paid to coach, and then the racing is the branding. Granted, the racing he does on that weekend is part of it, but him being a data point, it's a big value, something people are willing to pay for. The point of that post, like you said, was more so to get it doesn't have to be a team that brings a guy up. I mean, in Ryan's context, I think he was talking about putting someone under a tent that you wouldn't be with it. But when we talk constructors championship,
the constructors championship, yeah.
When you talk that could mean people can think team, people can think manufacturer. When he was talking constructors championship, he was talking about the OEMs. So Burrell Art, you can put the OTK chassis together, you can put the Burrell Art chassis together, the CRG stuff together, and if you did that properly, and let's say you took away the money from those classes, right? But you put that where the OEMs would have money, they could, there's guys that can get funded and will pit on their own. We'll get go-karts, we'll get, expenses covered, and can still be a privateer. They wouldn't have to go with the team. Now they probably would, because it doesn't cost the team any more money for them to pit onto their space, really, more than the square footage, than for them to pit on their own. But I think that's what he was going with it there. But Jim's right. That is true. That adds on, I think, to the perception. How do you combat that? I don't know. I don't think there's any way to combat that of having a teammate out there. They've figured out that there are people that are willing to pay for that there's a value to that they see the value, they're happy with it. There's obviously a lot of happiness with it because the tent's full every race they go to. They're one of the biggest, if not the biggest team tent, and at the same time, they're also the most expensive. Is that intimidating for someone else? Absolutely. Are they beatable? Yes. I mean, I think, they've done a great job getting a head start the new X30 package. There's no question, and that's what's hurt that class a little bit. And there's some more sour grapes than myself about it that we're actually going head to head with them that we've seen every single week. But just having that guy there isn't inhibitive. I don't think there's any way to fix it, but he's dead on that. Like, there's little ways to cut costs down. Taking away that Thursday practice takes away an extra set of tires, takes away a hotel night. I think if you did, instead of making us do a pre-qualifying session on Friday for happy hour where you have to bolt on new tires to go in the fast group, so that way you're around fast guys and in theory on a slightly more gripped up racetrack by going second, and you did that maybe off championship points. So then it's incentivized to show up to the races, and you did championship points to split qualifying groups. Might get a few people that show up for one-offs that are a little bit upset, but you are taking out a $250 set of tires. That's one less on the weekend. So if you wanted to run 2 sets Friday, you could. In probably the medium tire classes, you probably wouldn't have to run a second set. You could probably run one new set of tires midway through the day in KA or in Cadet. I've done KA races where I ran good with trash can tires the whole practice day and just ran slightly less used ones. Now, that was, I think, a less competitive field than now, and maybe a little bit more fall off on the tire now, but you cut down little stuff, and that does add up over the course of the weekend. And then all of a sudden the team fees are a lot larger in comparison. But how do you fix that deal? You don't. The real matter is if there was a licensing system that would boot those guys out. That's what the real fix is. That's not a model realistically in the junior ranks. I mean, there might be some juniors that do get sponsored to go run under those events, those tents, but they're not asking for salaries to be a good data point and a coach. At the end of the day, it's if you want to have that, that's why we're talking on this big money level for those classes, because that's where those guys are running. That's where they're running those programs. If they were licensed to go there, and you'd still have those guys there, fair. But in theory, if you were good enough to get a license to go race head to head with Ryan Norberg, you wouldn't need that coaching, and you could go head to head and feel like you can compete with that. But that's where I'm saying, like, where the sport's not big enough to have that stuff yet. It needs to grow in a lot of other ways to support another level above what we have currently, because there's only so many of them around. Next card.
Yeah, I think, well, to expand off your point a little bit really quickly, I think if we're going to do like a fully pro class, we've talked about this before, but if you want to go like fully pro, you need some way to tell people, like you either have to move up or you can't run in this. I think of like IMSA and is it WEC have like the platinum, gold, silver, bronze level.
Even the CK stuff, like Marian Kremers isn't allowed to go run the Rotax World Finals or the IAME Finals anymore, because he's at the level of a KZ guy. So those guys have to run that stuff. So there's less of that. But if you incentivize guys to get out, if there was enough market for wanting to be, in a pro class, then they could still have that model there, but there would be guys that would go head to head with them, toe to toe with them, fine, like they are now. But that's not it's not the class that you should be looking at budget racing for, which is why the argument last week was to not do the spec racing stuff. So I think Jim's point's right. Yeah. As long as that stuff's kept away. And that was the other point that we were making of like, in a K motor rebuild is only a couple $100 cheaper than an X30, maybe one less set of tires. That $6,000 number we threw out last week could be $4,500 to $5,000 to go run KA at the highest level. So it's important to understand that like we're talking on these changes for those classes because they need changes in different ways. But we can't stop the ball of evolution a little bit. And there's been professional karting drivers around for ages. Chris Wareheim talked about that last week too. And you see it still in Europe. So there is that around. There isn't a good place for them to go when they come to the States. And so they go into kind of this hybrid semi-pro X30 class. It's a spec class, but it's a top level class. And the pro shifter stuff, the same thing. So next, what we got next?
So the next one that I have is from Kevin Coleman. He was the one who brought up the point of paying out for K100. And he's talking about when he's asking about K going pro is because that payout contingency class shouldn't be the pro class in entries. So that being said, you do need to pay K. Do you need to pay K the same as like 30? No, but the higher the class, the higher the payout, but pay $500 to $1,000 a weekend for the overall winner. Give them opportunity to make money to move up. And then he goes on to talk about he used to be a professional bowler, bowled in the PBA, stuff like that. And he said he won more money in small events offering smaller prize money than I did in bigger ones offering more, but it took 7 or 8 small events to equal a major event payday. But those smaller events paid for him to be able to compete at the major events. And I'm kind of mixed. I'm like 50-50 on whether KA should be getting paid or not, because I think one of the difficulties there, especially between comparing like the bowling, I don't know the budgets of bowling. I don't know the economics of it or anything, but like we were just saying, the price to run KA at USPKS is so much that any money that you would win, unless you're making 10 grand on a weekend, you're not going to be able to make money. You can't save up money from your winnings to move up into X30. So I'm not 100% sold on paying out outright for KA Senior. Again, I like the idea of providing incentives for teams or manufacturers or even the series to be giving opportunities to move into X30 off of merit and not having to save up that money if you really earned it. You have to be able to go out there and really, show that you deserve it and not just have to. I'm kind of losing my track there, but I don't.
So
I'm not like the idea of giving money to KA.
So what Ryan's point was to take that money that would be that 1,000 or 500, which so let's explain, give a little bit of where we're at with the landscape right now. X30 pays or USPKS pays for X30 Junior and X30 Senior. SCUSA pays for every class that is over 30 entries, and then I think it's a guaranteed purse for X30 Senior and for Pro Shifter. So even in mini and micro, you make a small purse on the end of the weekend, or actually I think per day for the top 3 in those classes. But if we're going to try and do a delineation system of, let's say this is a pro class, right? When you enter a pro class, you understand that you're competing against professionals, and it should be structured as the top guys eat, the bottom guys don't. That's not how an amateur class should be. The amateur class should be trying to find ways to drop their cost down as low as possible so talent can shine on a lower budget, and they can, in theory, get picked up to go run the pro class. So in his argument was to take what would be that $500 or $1,000 purse and put that into the competitors fund or the constructors fund that would then be divvied out on a, $5,000 by the end of the season to the team that has the most points scored, most wins scored across the board in the classes, right? Or it could even be on the team that wins, let's say, the Pro Division Championship to incentivize them to sponsor guys specifically in that, and then it would be entries into it. Exactly like what Barry Hastings said, if you win KA, you should be able to get enough of a budget to go and run X30 the following year, the standard road to Indy model. What I thought would always be kind of interesting, and I've been chewing on this idea for a couple weeks, and the implementation be a little bit weird. But again, a pro class should pay for the top 3 or top 5 or top 10. I mean, ultimately, you should pay for as many as make the feature. But in dirt racing, that means that half the field still goes home empty. And in NASCAR racing, the same thing. If you don't make the show, you don't get paid. So there are going to be some losers out of it. But I don't think there should be that so much of a top-heavy purse in the amateur classes. And if you did have it, you would still attract guys from the pro class with the way things are at right now to go and run in that division. What would be cool is like almost like a rebate system, because series are always struggling to get pre-entries. Every series promoter that tunes into the show will, I think, agree. They're probably pulling their hair out up until the race weekend because they have no idea what entries look like. I have been in the back end for the Sunshine State Karting Challenge since its inception. I've seen, watched entries like the stock market since I was like 14 years old because I was always trying to pick out which races to go to. Entries can double from 100 to 200, or 100 to 250 in the last couple of days, sometimes the last couple of hours. So, series promoters are always trying different ways to market it, and we kind of have it really on a more negative scale where if you don't pre-enter, you pay a higher fee at the racetrack. And they try to kind of make that negative scale sometimes tiered, where very early entry is even cheaper, like a month out, and then it slowly goes up. But what if we had almost like a rebate program where, okay, as soon as your class hits 20 entries, everyone gets $50 back or $50 credit to the next race. And then as soon as the class hits 30 entries, everyone gets $100, another $50 back or $100 back. The series is still making money, but it's basically turning the series into affiliate marketing, where now maybe let's say that was going to be your money to pay someone to market your series for your amateur classes. If all of a sudden, and you're trying to run on a budget and you're paying for yourself, that your entry fee could go down. If you got 5 more of your buddies to show up and race that race, you're going to be posting on Facebook and texting those guys every single week to try and get the pre-entry in. And then that rebate goes away if they all wait till the race weekend to pay the walk-up fee. Now, how this would work, I don't know a single system, knowing all the registration systems that I know, that would be even able to handle this automatically. I'm sure something could be built up like it, but I think it's a novel idea where you're basically making your racers sell the race for you. And we've seen the fruits of that. Rob Howden with EKN used the EKN platform to get the KA Masterclass up to 25 because he needed to for him to be able to race at Supernats 25 as well. But for KA Senior, which is already a big class, but to get the pre-entries earlier and to then the whole field benefits from bringing more entries, right? And that's the argument that Kevin's making with this comment, is that we're bringing all this entry money in. Shouldn't we be getting some kind of kickback? And if you do a purse payout, only 3 or 4 guys are going to get that kickback. Mm-hmm. But if you're bringing them all this money and then they're giving you a little bit less entry fee because your entries are so much bigger, especially if you're bringing them that pre-entry dollars into the series bank account a month out or 2 weeks out instead of the day before, and they've got to run crazy credit card bills to buy all the tires for the series to provide tires, buy all the fuel, and anticipate a major event and have stock inventory. I mean, there's all that stuff that promoters have on the back end that they've got to prepare for and put money up for way in advance. If you had that system like that, where, people were not just not getting penalized for pre-entering, but actually benefiting from pre-entering early, and the classes benefiting from pre-entering earlier, I think that'd be something that could be cool. But his point, right, is the same as a lot of people. They're bringing a lot of entries. They're basically paying into the pro purse. There should be some kickback. Ryan's idea was to, instead of giving them a purse that could attract pro guys into it, was to make it where it's a ladder class, truthfully, and that the guys that run up front in that class would have an opportunity, like a scholarship, to go and run the next season, which is a great way to keep guys hooked in. But I think something like that too, where it's not top heavy. A pro class can be top heavy with the payout, and it's fine. That's understood. Shouldn't be that way, I don't think, in kids racing. At least if you're trying to make it where it's as inexpensive as possible to climb the ladder to become a pro level driver.
If you're looking for something that's sustainable, I like the idea of the rebate. I like the idea of trying to push people to like the Road to Indy system with the ladders, all that stuff. I think they're all good. I don't have any solutions for this. I have never been in a position to be able to come up with a really good solution to that. I think I like this comment here talking about like point systems to if you win a championship.
Which we touched on last week. And they run into issues with that sometimes too, where they're kind of having guys point out of those classes without getting opportunities to be up. So at least if you had it where, you could have it where guys point out, but sometimes they may not have an opportunity or the budget to go and run the bigger stuff. So having career minor leaguers, I don't think is a bad thing. I think if you point guys out too early, you run into the same issue with semi-pro shifter and pro shifter had, where guys get the opportunity to move up and then quit because that class is all of a sudden a steep jump in competition. It need to be really, really well done, and it would need to be a very high standard to point out. But you probably would see guys jump out. Like if it just pointed out, it wouldn't fix the problem ultimately. The problem is, you could make guys declare for the pro stuff for sure, and there should be some kind of system to it. But you need to. This is again the same analogy, right? This is penalizing a select few versus making it, versus benefiting. And so if you're instead of penalizing the guy that wins, he should get a benefit to go up to the next class. And so the same thing with like the rebate idea, right? We shouldn't be penalizing just the people that wait forever. But if you want the whole field to benefit, right, and you wanted pre-entries to come in for your event, you're going to basically enlist everybody in your event to be, like I said, an affiliate marketer in a way. And again, I want to clarify that because affiliates, I'm not saying it to be a pyramid scheme. They're not going to make $50 more every time that goes up. The whole field equally benefits of the pre-entries going up, but I don't know. I that's a novel idea. I think we got to think beyond the normal stuff of what we have said in the sport in the past of doing it. The the purses right now, I think, are very top heavy, and in some of those classes could go a little bit deeper. But more than anything, it's fine to have it be top heavy, I think, in a pro division, because you're trying to get guys to go win. So that's fine. The rides are based on them going to win. But in the smaller, in the supposed ladder classes, whether it's slower speed like KA or younger age groups, finding something that you can drop the cost for the whole field, that's what we should be looking at. And that's exactly on Jim Zillish's comment too, of like, we need to, try and both keep the perception that those classes are not having big guys come in like Norberg and all them, which right now they're just not doing it out of respect. But you could have a point system that kind of keeps them out a little bit. Really, I don't think you need a point system that would boost them out. I think you just don't let the X30 guys go back down. I don't think you let them double dip. That would solve that, because if they are financially way better off to go run X30 because they're competing for money, then they wouldn't even bother entertaining the idea. What do we got next?
Yeah, I think with the pointing out point from Supercross, I think it would maybe have to be, because again, like even if it's $5,000 from the money that you would save for you at KA over a season and then giving it to the drivers, that's like one weekend. I think the point would be, what I was thinking was like, if you point out, like in Supercross, if you point out of KA,
well, it's not, you're not, what it needs to be is the difference in cost. You're not talking like to run a whole season of X30 for free.
That's true. That's true.
You should be coming out ahead. You should come out of weekends better off to finish top 5 or top 10 in a pro class than you should be to win in the semi-pro class. So that's where that number is a nominal number, right? But if you make them declare it and they got to run that, and that's where the star power looks, that's where the media looks, that's where the opportunities lie, then it'll come.
Yeah.
What we got here on this last one you got?
Last one right here. It was they were agreeing with about the length of the race day. I think the length of the race weekends and stuff like that. And they're saying, but with 18 different classes, you either extend the events and still have to limit the track time for each class, or you can look at reducing the number of classes. And I like this idea of splitting the events between like Kid Kart, Micro, and Mini one weekend, and then Junior, Senior, Masters the next weekend. Or you might throw Junior in with the Micros and Minis, however it works out depending on the series. But you're spreading it out over 2 weeks instead of one. And teams don't need travel in between. You can do a 3-day event with 1 day of practice, 2 days of racing, with 2 to 3 times track time as current series. Maybe not ideal for teams and or families that have kids running in both weekends, but those are likely the minority. The value is part of the cost question, and the value proposition of the current series is lacking given 6-7 minute sessions and limited racing, which I've heard this idea thrown around before with, like running 2-day events and stuff like that. I can't think of what the big drawback would be for the end customer, the drivers and stuff like that. I can certainly see why, a track or a team may not want to do that with how long they have to be spending out of the track and how long the track might have to be shut down if they have anything else they might want to get going and stuff like that. I can understand why the teams and tracks wouldn't. I do like this idea from the perspective of a driver though.
So that's like a big shock value to the system. Idea. It's not a bad idea at all. I mean, like you said, in Europe, there's events KZ runs at that OK and OK Junior don't run at, and vice versa, and then they pair them with different 1 or 2 other classes with it. But that being said, yes, there are some teams that specialize in certain classes. They wouldn't run both weekends, and there are some teams that are so big that they wouldn't really feel much of a hurt of dividing them up. But I think that's still not a big majority of the paddock. You have 6 or 8 teams that maybe have more than 10 drivers on a given weekend, and you got a lot of smaller operations. We don't have a million factory teams in the U.S., so those smaller operations have a wide spread of classes. They might have 1 or 2 mini guys, 1 or 2 masters guys, 1 or 2 whatever. And a prime example that you can see that is this weekend for 206 Stars at the Stars Championship Series. A lot of teams that are specializing in running 206 engines, they're going to want to go if they have junior, if they have cadet, if they have 206 masters, because they've got a wide spread of them. That's, I think, partially why the team that comes to mind is the AEM karting guys with Mick Gabriel, but there's plenty more. There's a lot of American 4-cycle guys that are not at this event, but probably would be with an event of this size, run at this level, at really top level racetracks like MGM, like Coyote, like VLR on the West Coast. But if there's only one class for their guys to run in, it's not financially feasible for them. Now, in the long term, it could be if those classes do double, triple in size because of more seat time. But those guys, it's like a chicken or the egg thing. If you take this leap of faith here in the beginning, you're going to struggle to really get guys to go with the way that our model is right now. The end customer probably benefit a little bit, but also if we're talking end customer and you're thinking like privateers, think of, how much of a scramble it is for everybody if you just have one person working on a go-kart from practice to qualifying at a national race right now with 7 or 8 groups from warm-up to qualifying, and you only get an hour in between sessions. That's still a tight turnaround if anything goes wrong in warm-up that you've got to fix, and you've got to bolt on new tires and sometimes mount new tires. At GoPro Motorplex, they have a hybrid model like this. At club races, Donald Durbin, for his track over in California, they do this. They have a 4-cycle weekend or 4-cycle club race day, and they have a 2-cycle club race day the next weekend. And I think the practice day is the day before. I think the race Sunday and practice Saturday, or it's like a 2-day format. But they have them split. That's fine for the local teams because the travel cost isn't bad, and there's a lot of privateers there, and I think they have enough classes, not bad. But like a GoPro, they can't scale the whole 40 kart field and still give you time if it's a 30 or 40-minute gap to your next session. So that 3 or 4 class a weekend works if you have multiple run groups per class. It's still roughly then like a deal, or you make the practice sessions or qualifying a whole lot longer. But for that stuff, that's where, like, yes, you get more seat time. The qualifying to practice turnaround would be tight to get the teams to commit. The smaller shops that would go that have maybe 5 people they go and support. And again, we say teams a lot. I don't want to make it seem like it should be only team racing we cater to. That was a good point, like we talked about earlier with Thursday. But it's important to understand that, that kind of weekend could work, and it works over there because there are 200 entries over 3 classes a lot of the time. I don't know if the seat time comes out close, and Jim might be able to correct it. It was, I believe, that comment was about because they've been over there. But
Jim made the comment, and they've been over there. Connor ran Academy Trophy 2 years ago now, I think it was, and they've got plenty of experience. He wants to jump in and give us some ideas on that. And I like the idea from a driving perspective. I'm not 100% like you said with the entries. I don't know how the timing would work out then. I didn't even think of that with how all that was gonna play out.
Let's go on some of the stream comments. We got a bunch of these.
I like so one of these was from way earlier. It was from Trevor Marsha, and he was talking about it's not even just entry counts that matter at this point, but it's timing as well. And this is something that we haven't really talked about a ton, but with school starting now, there's drivers that might need to start missing races because of school, or you have to get schools involved. And we touched it on a little bit earlier, but like I remember I was always really lucky that the first race of the season for Route 66 was over my spring break. And I never really thought about that. There's a lot of families that don't get those opportunities. And I think it might be something that needs to be considered as well, is that, this racing does still take a toll on kids. I know I just saw, who was it? Just switched to, Frankie Mossman just switched to online school because he was missing so much with the racing. And I think Jeremy Fletcher is just recently moving into online school, I think.
Well, so like what do you, so like point here, right, is like having a lot of events to hit is means that they got to pick and choose. But, we talked about on the show, this series does have no Thursday practice. The other 2 slightly bigger ones do. This goes back on, in my opinion, he's right? Like, school is a big deal. It's why a lot of those guys are fighting tooth and nail to get the June and July dates every single year and get those out as soon as possible. I mean, we're seeing schedules come out in freaking early August and late July, and we are 6 months away. We don't even know exactly what the winter tour schedules look like, but they're not fighting for those dates as hard as they are for the regular season summer dates that all the big guys are trying to fight around for. And so they're putting their schedules out earlier, because if they put it out first to the public, then the other series, if their series comes out second and they conflict, the black eye goes on the second series. But this point here, right? Like, okay, true, 100%. You got to pick and choose what races you go to, and the race weekends being really, really long means that you can go to less race weekends because it costs more, and it means less days of school. But this series, for example, is one less day than the other series. If everybody ganged together and went to the series that had less days, then it would be a no issue. But I don't say that in a bad way. But and when you're looking out for yourself, in the case of Trevor Marsh, dad of Cameron Marsh, super good mini driver. And again, big supporter of the show. Thanks for tuning in as always, Trevor. If I'm in Trevor's spot, I totally get it. I'm not going to Jersey this weekend because I'm trying to make my kid as good as possible. I'm going to the races that are close to me, going to races over the summer, and then I'm picking and choosing the races that have the biggest and most competitive fields that are going to develop my kid. It just so happens right now that those races are the long weekends that people test the week before, and they show up on Wednesday night to go there Thursday. If I had 30 people and we were all talking to each other a whole lot more, we're like, we're going to band together and go to the one series that has one less day so I can miss one less day at school, great. But how that band would work together, I don't know. But that's the catch-22 that also is kind of on that, right? Until SCUSA went east and we started getting the whole country to really all run IAME products, and every once in a while guys would run rocks, you had a lot more fragmented industry, even though the numbers were roughly the same or a little bit smaller at certain events. But a national season would typically be, if you're an East Coast guy, 8 or 9 races. You'd run USPKS, you'd run WK. If you're a Rotax guy, you ran the Florida Winter Tour. You might run the Florida Winter Tour Rock weekends. That'd be 6. You run the Rotax US Nationals, run Rotax Pan Am, that make 8. You run Supernats, that'd be 9. And if you're an East Coast guy, your 9th event would probably be, your 10th event would be the Supernats. 4 USPKS, 5 WK races. Then a West Coast guy would run the SCUSA Pro Tour, 3 races. Run the SCUSA California Pro Kart Challenge, 5 races, that'd be 8. You run Supernats, you make it 9. The whole country didn't really see each other until the Supernats. Now, everybody's going to the same races, and that same schedule is about 15 to 17. So there is part of that to consider in, but also it's like if we all voted with pocketbooks and went to series and we just jump series like crazy, or force them with, again, if there was a big, they will listen. They work for the racers. If the racers demanded enough through, themselves individually through a number of emails or talking to each other, or through their shop or team liaison, that stuff can get done too. Both on, teams working together, but also that. But gotcha. And Trevor just commented on saying that, not indicative of what's possible at this rate. That's true too. That's sorry. You're right, Trevor. I'll clarify that too. Before I went off on that one. Going to tracks that are way further out of the ordinary, that means you have to burn an extra day on travel on the front end or the back end. Those are probably tracks we should experiment with in the summer. So that's a good point. Going to a place like Jersey here now versus like maybe going to GoPro now and going to Jersey in June might have went out maybe a little bit better. Just because for that big of a haul, people could justify that as that being like their long trip of the weekend versus a track that's closer. That could be a track that could run, or at least a track that had a bigger club following. Those could be the tracks that run during the school year, and the tracks that are more destination tracks that don't have a big club following, but we want to go try and random pockets of the country. That could be over the summer or spring break or winter break, like with Daytona. So yeah, that's a good point too. What else do we have starred here, Aaron?
So I've got one from Marcus Malkit, and this is also it ties into another.
I was hoping we'd wait on that till the end of the show.
Oh, okay. We can wait on it. I didn't have anything else, though. I had one other one that I guess I can throw.
I want to end the show on that one.
Okay. This was the opinion on baby drivers, which I think we've talked about before. I still haven't seen it. I still haven't gotten the Discovery Plus subscription to check it out. But I haven't really heard anything about it in general. I don't think there's nearly the outrage that the other one had back in 2014.
So we're all, every armchair expert's going to get upset about it and probably not going to like what I have to say, but I encourage everyone that is going to be against these shows to go and talk to either parents or the kids that are in cadet and maybe junior right now of if they watch Kart Life or how they got into karting. And they probably got in either on rental karting, a family member that was in it, or by watching Kart Life. At the end of the day, publicity is publicity. The Paul brothers have proven that. Donald Trump has proven that. Every other sensationalist sport like the UFC has proven that. All you need is to just get some exposure. And while some people at the beginning might write it off, at the same time, it'll at least be like, what is this? People know what reality TV is and know that reality TV is a little bit out there. I don't think a lot of people at this day and age, with how big social media is, believe everything that they see on TV anymore. it's just exposure at the end of the day. Supporting those projects is great. Do I think it's something that we need more of? I mean, Drive to Survive is looked at in the same way, but it has done a lot for the F1 guys, and it's ultimately trickled down to everyone in motorsport on the road course side in the U.S. So I think I'm all for it. If the TV guys are going to do it, go for it. It's not something you're ever going to see me do with KC. The paddock pass stuff, that's about as close as we'll get to the drama behind the scenes. I don't like to focus on the kids because I don't want to put something out that could hurt a kid's racing career down the line. It's why when the DeTulio incident happened, we were never really big on it. At the time, weren't streaming, so never got caught. But especially why I try not – it's one of the reasons why I'm not super motivated to go and really push the mini and micro classes, because when you do that and the kids inevitably crash each other, some kid's going to be at fault sometime, and that kid will get ripped to shreds online. And it's like, no kid deserves that. But when you go and run senior, or you run the Highline class, you got to understand that now you are, eyeballs are on you. You've got fans, and you're going to get some haters based on what you do. So I'm all for those shows. Are they done? Are they done that makes the sport look perfect? No. Neither is a karting crash compilation on Instagram or YouTube either, or TikTok. But what does it do? It shows what the go-karts look like. It shows that kids at that age can do it. And if the kid watches it, they don't, at that age that might be the target audience for it, which is probably what it's for. It's meant to, for kids to see kids that look like themselves that are their age doing that thing. They're not going to understand that it's over dramatized. They're just going to think it's cool, because their brains aren't developed at that level to be like, wow, this is stupid. They're going to see, oh, kid go fast in a go-kart. Like, I want to do that. So that stuff does drive growth in the sport. It is good for the sport to have stuff like that, whether we like it or not. But at the same time, we need to be ready to capture them with other good stuff when people see that. If that's their hook content, it's on us at KC, it's on Rob and David at EKN, it's on the series, it's on everybody else that is putting stuff out that we've got good content to catch them with, whether it's in the karting websites and articles, but also good video and pieces like that shows what the sport really is. Because if that's all there is, that's not good. But if you have a bit of negative publicity and you follow that up with a lot of really good stuff, 6 months later, people forget what the negative thing was. They just remember who you are. So
yeah, I want to add too, I kind of look at this baby drivers thing like that Australian movie from Netflix that came out a couple years ago, Go-Karts. And I compared Go-Karts to The Karate Kid because it's literally the same storyline. And if you look at it, like you look at The Karate Kid, there's a ton. Everybody knows about karate and everything. Like everybody tried karate when they were a kid. Every 7-year-old kid tried to go out and do karate at some point. Maybe not you, but I did for sure. And it's kind of like that, what we see as problems with the show isn't what the people that this is meant for and the people that we're benefiting off of by getting them interested in that. That's not what they're going to notice. We might notice like, oh, this is also stupid. They didn't get this right. This doesn't happen actually. But the other people aren't going to notice. There's, like you said, they're noticing the main point of it, which is the go-karts and going fast. And when you look back on it, if you look back on it a year from now, most people probably aren't even going to remember what all of the details were. They just remember the go-karts going around at this point.
So before we get to that last comment, Kevin Coleman's point here, I agree with this. If you look at the moto world, like they'll have like smaller events that do pay a little bit for like the pro classes to get the pro guys to show up at the smaller stuff. I think that'd be great. I don't think that our sport's big enough where we would have that many drivers attempting to run top level classes in shifter. I mean, there is a little bit of it. I see it at Atlanta Motorsports Park. Steve Frank and the Body Symmetry Eyes Up guys. They try to do like to get the shifter class numbers to be there. They'll put like $500 to win a 4-race little mini championship at the club. It incentivizes more guys to show up. So putting little bits of money there at club races for like shifter, or if the 125 single speed stuff gets solved, because again, the X30 stuff, it's kind of fallen off. There's the bad perception with the motors a little bit that how that gets fixed is either other guys start winning or they make changes on the class. But yeah, little bits of money there. Go Promoterplex for their club races normally used to give away. I don't know if it's still done or not. I think it still is. Set of tires to the top 3 in X30 senior, but doesn't do it for KA. So there's still a reason to go run that. So having a little payout for the small race, I think is good. And then the last question, for last comment from Marcus. I just wanted to lead that on and read it out fully for the audio listeners on the podcast at home, which thanks, Marcus, for tuning in. Need to get fans involved. Quit working about the racers. Racers will always be there. Money is in the fans. Be creative. Lower the cost for racers. Then you'll get more racers. Then you'll get more fans. Yes. There's not much more I'm going to say on that one. Yes, that is exactly what we want to do. That is exactly what I think we have got the on-track product to do. I think we've got a great sport for the fans. My comment about the amateurs looking at as much track time as you can for the dollar amount that you can. Pros are entertainers. Marcus is from an oval short track background. He's got a great family lineage with late model short track racing. You show up, you run a 5-minute hot lap session, you run a heat race maybe, you run a main event, and you get your money and you get out of there. And you pay whatever it is, you try not to have to burn up too much tires. Maybe there's practice early in the day, but boom, put on a show, gone. Right? A real pro show should be a Friday, Saturday night thing. 3 practices Friday, qualify Friday night, heat A, heat B, Saturday, LCQ, main. In, out, put on a show in less than 2.5 hours with less than 2 classes. You'll get a big fan turnout. You won't get fans to watch us for 12 hours a day. But you might be able to get them to watch us for 2 hours for the 20-minute races that we got, because the races are pretty badass. So that, again, those events, shocks to the system. Someone wants to take a shot at it. I'd love to be involved with it. I think it'd be cool. Street races from Karting TV, also great for getting exposure. If you capitalize on it right, got to have a lot of booths at those events that show what we do. Got to have shops out there that, help people get in. Because street races are great, but you don't have any fan revenue from them, at least with the way they are right now. The IndyCar and NASCAR and F1 guys, when they do street races, they shut down the blocks around so they can still sell tickets. They don't really sell tickets at go-kart street races. But to put on a go-kart race that would have fans at it, I think the format's got to change. Our mindset's got to change of what that race is going to be. And then all of a sudden, if it's other revenue coming in besides the racer entry fees, you can have a really nice, healthy person. You can walk away better than what you put in because someone else is footing the bill, and that someone else is the fans you're putting on a show for. That's all I want to say on that one. We're working on it. I think that'd be great. It's the right way. We got to go with the top of the sport. Not every series, not every race. Very top, small 5% or less of races should be like that. Very top, small percent of drivers are at that level, and very top, small percent of classes should be like that. But that's where we were at. We answered a lot. Hopefully this answered some questions, some comments, add a little more context. As always, you can put comments here on this week's show. If you're watching here delayed or not live, I'll make sure we can answer them on next week's show as well. You can DM us. Again, before I wrap up, I know I already said it. I wanted to wish happy birthday to my dad. I want to say thank you all you guys, everybody else, wishing me happy birthday here. Someone has said Taco Bell is not a great birthday dinner. It's going to be cold Taco Bell now because we went long again for the second week in a row. But hey, I love doing this stuff. Trevor and Kyle are laughing in the background over in the hotel room because they have already finished their Taco Bell and they're watching TV. But I enjoy this stuff. I'm willing to do that and willing to do these 25-hour drives with a couple hours of sleep. That's how I spent my birthday today. There's no big celebration, but we're getting to be at a go-kart track. We're getting to be at a race. Should be a lot of fun. Nowhere else I'd rather be. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. And hopefully you guys watch the broadcast this weekend from Stars.